suit jacket with side bands 5 inches long. 5 inches long. I have two-tone robes, all the rest, yeah, you know this is wrong. No, this is wrong.
Hello, welcome to the Official Protocol, a channel dedicated to the world's greatest rock and roll band, The Who. The band is a shared passion of ours, and these discussions are more of a personal journey than a critical review. Also, no money is made from these videos, so please let us know we're not alone in Who land by taking a quick second to like, subscribe, and share with your Who-minded friends. Constructive feedback is always welcome either in the comments below or on Twitter and Instagram at Fisher Protocol. My name is Ethan, and today on the show I'm joined by Betts and Skyaaz to discuss the movie version of Quadrophenia. We don't claim to be experts, just fans of the world's greatest rock and roll band, The Who. Hey, guys.
Hey.
Hello. Greetings from the UK.
Yes.
Well, yeah. Today we're discussing Quadrophenia. Betts, how are you doing?
Anticipating another hurricane, but other than that.
But yeah, today we have Paul from the UK. Paul is under the name of Skyaaz as a YouTuber, who recently, we'll put links down below, recently had a video on mod fashion. And since we wanted to talk about Quadrophenia, but we know for a fact that it's like a British institution in itself, separate from the band The Who, felt that it would be ridiculous not to have someone from the UK to talk about maybe its legacy and certain things that are different, and someone who can, give me the old "a torch is a flashlight" speech again kind of thing. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi. Before we get started, just a little bit of background as far as relating to you, The Who, or Quadrophenia in general.
Well, yeah, it's interesting actually. When I was a kid, my parents were pretty cool actually, and we used to go to the West End and see plays. It actually turned out my dad was a postman, and he used to get cheap tickets. Anyway, they took me to see Tommy. Can you believe that? I think I was 7.
What year was it?
It would have been about, I don't know, mid to late 70s. Okay. And I phoned my mum up because there's two things I wanted to ask her, because I wasn't sure if I'd made it up. You can kind of make stuff up. I thought maybe did I dream that I saw Tommy? And did I dream that I went to Brighton and there was a riot with mods? And no, I didn't dream. They both happened. So I went to see Tommy with my parents, and I asked her, what she remembered. And she said, oh, it was awful, wasn't it? And I said, was it? Why was it awful? And she said, it was very inappropriate for young boys. And I was like, what way was it inappropriate? She said, all that fiddling about. And I said, no, that's a great bit. And another thing that happened is after we saw the stage production, BBC, because back then there was only 3 channels, the BBC, I think it was on BBC 2, aired Tommy, and they did a live broadcast on radio. And my parents had a really, really high-end Bang & Olufsen stereo, and I remember watching it. And the scene, with the Gypsy Queen, and the scared the hell out of me as a kid.
Right. Yeah.
It really, really scared me. And obviously we got this stereo blasting and stuff. But yeah, so that was kind of my introduction to The Who. But they've just always been there. Yeah. They're just,
right.
They're just an institution to music, and I got the greatest hits CD and I was listening to it. Even the later stuff I love. You bet I love. My girlfriend said, I didn't know this was The Who. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, I get that a lot about certain things for sure. Especially stuff like Eminence Front and stuff like that. They're like, this doesn't sound like The Who. All right, well, on to Quadrophenia. Betts, did you have any history with the movie Quadrophenia before?
I do. I have a little bit. So about 77 or so, The Who bought a share in Shepherds. They bought a space in Shepperton Studios. The reason why was kind of like there was a twofold reason. One was because the studio was foundering a little bit. The British film industry was foundering a little bit, and they felt an obligation to sort of support it. Also, there was an idea that they've always been sort of a cinematic band. I mean, if you even go back to Lambert and Stamp, who took over their management, they took it over because really they wanted a band to make a movie about. And then it sort of evolved into more management than film. But coming on the heels of Tommy, they were really interested in sort of branching out into film. Roger had a robust acting career after Tommy, and so did Keith to some extent. So they put together a group called the Who Films Limited and bought the space. And the first film they did was The Kids Are All Right. That was in the can. And then they were going to do the Roger vehicle, McVicker, and Quadrophenia. Bill Kerbishley went to Polygram Records, or Polygram Films, and basically finished up the paperwork and signed the paperwork for a $2 million deal for Quadrophenia and McVicker. And that date was September 7th, 1978. Which is a pretty significant date in Who history.
And why? What date is it?
Well, it would be the day after Keith Moon died. And when he had just signed the paperwork, he got the phone call.
Right.
And so big decisions had to be made. They were kind of staring down the barrel of a $2 million deal, and they went ahead and did it.
Yeah. Yeah. They always seem to be on the cusp of something big when bad things happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially in this era, it's beginning of kind of a not great stretch,
right,
for the guys. What you personally? When did you see the movie?
I saw it in 1980. I want to say 81 or 82. Back then, they would have this thing. AMC theaters had this thing called the AMC Midnight Movie Express, and if you go on YouTube, you could actually see like a commercial for it. But they would show cult films. So I got asked out on a date by a guy, bass player, of course, and he said, "What do you want to do?" And of course, I opened up the paper and I was like, "Quadrophenia is showing," and so then I talked him into also bringing my best friend Mia along, and so we saw Quadrophenia that way at the Midnight Movies, and it would pop up periodically at the Midnight Movies, and of course, we were front and center for every show.
Right on.
Yeah.
And Paul, when was the first time you saw the movie Quadrophenia?
I think I got it out on video.
Yeah,
that's how old I am. We used to have videos.
Yeah.
But it's one of those films when you're growing up. I don't remember watching the whole thing. Used to watch bits. You'd watch the fight scenes, or you'd watch the alley scene, and I don't recall as a kid sitting down and watching the whole thing. And I think it's because it's quite a gritty movie, isn't it? It's quite unique in that sense that I don't think it would have appealed to me as a kid to sit down and watch the whole thing. I actually, as I said, I watched the whole thing last night just to refresh myself, and it's such a powerful movie even now, and you can understand why it's got that legacy, why people adore it. I mean, I can talk to you about Brighton and how that is. I mean,
oh yeah, sure. Well, before we get started on that, let me just do my little paragraph here. Today we're talking about Quadrophenia. It's a 1979 British drama based on the Who's classic album from 1973. It was directed by Frank Rodham and stars Phil Daniels as Jimmy, Leslie Ash as Steph, Phil Daniels as Chalky, Mark Winnett as Dave, and rounding out the cast we have Ray Winstone as Kevin, and Sting as the Ace Face, our friend Gordon, right? And I can't not mention Sting without saying that he wrote Message in a Bottle, which is still one of my all-time favorite riffs, and I'll never let it go. I even have some house remixes of that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, Paul, let's continue on. Because it's such a British institution. Give us some, what were you going to say about Brighton? You know what I mean?
Right. So, I mean, the reason you found me on YouTube is because this summer I holidayed with my family in Brighton, which is on the south coast, and it's the kind of iconic location of Quadrophenia. And when I was there, a couple of things happened. I went to a Paul Weller exhibition and saw the scooter guys and stuff, and just reminded me how much I love that whole mod culture and sound. And then I went walking around the lanes and the town, and there's quite a few shops that sell mod clothing. And I took my camera out and I just filmed them. And I turned it into a little episode and put it on my YouTube channel. And in about a week, it's had 5,000 views. So there's a lot of interest in this stuff. And, you know, I've looked into the whole kind of mod culture currently, and it's still thriving. I mean, there's still scooter clubs across the country. Middle-aged men will all dress, you know, with polo shirts, and the music's still alive, you know. And it kind of opened my eyes to something that I've always enjoyed, but kind of forgot. Do you know what I mean? You know, and I've always enjoyed The Who, and I've always enjoyed the Jam, and you know, it just kind of brought it back. So it was really nice that you saw that. I guess it was that episode, and then invited me on.
I mean, yeah, and I could just, you know, some people have asked to be on this episode, right? And I couldn't take everyone that asked to be on it, because it is such kind of like a milestone. You were talking about you watch certain parts of the movie over and over again, and you know, whether it's the alley scene, whether it's the fights and everything. I mean, but because it's not a plot heavy movie, right? It's kind of like a weekend, like a bad weekend in this kid's life, basically, right? Yeah. But he also goes through so many ups and downs about, you know, it's being at the top of what he thinks is cool and life is great, but very quickly to the bottom because all that stuff is over so quickly.
Yeah.
And I think why the movie endures is it is such a slice of life at that time. And, you know, I don't know if you guys remember what it's like, how dramatic everything is when you're at that age. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just remember watching it, and, you know, last night when I saw it again, just the teenage despair you have, particularly love, when you lose a girlfriend. You know, your whole world crumbles, doesn't it? And it's like, and you felt that when you watched the program, and you know, and he comes across as a character as quite unlikable in places, but kids are.
Yeah.
And you know, it's I just I think you'd be a pretty hard pressed person to watch it and not be moved by some of the scenes in it.
Yeah. I'll say Phil Daniels' acting for me is like, he nails it, because when he has that meltdown scene when he collides with the mail truck, that's not even acting. I mean, like, you feel like you're watching a kid totally melt down. You know, it's just like this. It's not, you know, it's not a soliloquy. It is an absolute meltdown. And that's one of the best things I think about this movie, is the fact that these were unknowns, and they just deliver, and they act like kids because they were kids. They're just
I'll tell you what's interesting that I found out is that Johnny Rotten was considered for the part.
Yeah.
And I think he would have been fantastic in it. And I think Toya mentions that he was there and he did a screen thing, and the reason he didn't get it is because the insurance company wouldn't allow him.
Right.
But if you ask Johnny, it's because he didn't want to be a part of Pete Townshend's fantasies.
Oh, really? Is that what he says?
Yeah, that's his spin on it. You know, so you know, we'll take Johnny at his word, I guess.
I'll tell you what's interesting though is the producer who created this did incredibly well, because if you think about the mod scene as it was in the 70s when they made the film, it had kind of died, hadn't it? Okay. And they're making a film about the mod scene in the 60s. Okay. And if you think about what was up and coming, it was so-called new wave. And what he did was he got new wave artists to take part in it. So he got Sting and he got Toya, and he also got Ray Winston, who I don't know if Scum was before or after Quadrophenia.
The television show, the television play was before.
Not the film.
Not the film.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
they went
because I
back. They
was
went
thinking
back.
if he got it because of Scum, then that's kind of like unbelievable. But he obviously realised that Ray Winston was obviously going to be super popular
Yeah.
with the youth. So he basically got all these artists that the kids looked up to, and then put it in a backdrop of a '60s thing, and that caused the mod revival
Yeah.
in the '80s, late '80s. So as I said earlier, I went to Brighton Pier with my parents, and there was a riot. It would have been probably 1980 or 81.
Hmm.
And it could have been a scene from Quadrophenia. There's kids chucking pebbles, and it was crazy. You know, I was 10, I think.
Here comes the first most annoying why is it different in England question. Okay, I have a few of these. It's my favorite.
Okay.
I'm what you call an Anglophile, so I'm very into this, even though I haven't been. And there's probably no answer. It's just, oh, that's different. Which is like, what's up with the rocky beaches, man? What's up with the pebbles? Like, it's not sand. Is there any sandy beaches in England?
Yes, there is sandy beaches, but there's pebbly beaches. It's nice to have two. It's nice to have a choice. Do you want to go to a beach and have a lovely experience, or do you want to walk and actually do your feet in?
Yeah.
But you know, I actually quite like pebbly beaches. And also, some pebbly beaches are they're sandy when you get to the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I beg forgiveness for these really stupid American questions that I have sometimes.
See, I would be, you know, we saw Quadrophenia, and then we're like, we fancied ourselves mods in Florida. And so we'd go to the beach in our trench coats and moon around and that kind of thing, and be sad or whatever. And it's like 100 degrees.
So yeah, I used to do a bit of partying in the late 90s in the dance music area in Washington, D.C. and Baltimore.
Yeah.
And so much of this movie is like a photo snapshot of my life at the time.
Yeah.
You know, I guess I didn't put so much emphasis on the fact until I watched it this time that this kid's completely like fucked up the whole time. Like he's on pills like the whole time. If he has a great moment where he shows up the ace face in the dancing, and then he has to go out and look at the beach and be moody, as you said, he's completely wasted.
Yeah.
He's got, you know, the saucer eyes, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, he puts on eyeliner before he goes on the train. But
it's an amazing scene. I love that scene so much.
There's some lovely stuff that I saw, because obviously if you read about it, it says it doesn't feature the Who, but it does.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're watching the telly, he's watching the Who. When he's in bed, you've got a poster behind him, and it's like they're in it. They're in it. They're just not there in person.
Exactly. When they go to the party at the beginning of the movie, and it's listen to the rhythm of the falling rain, it's a real treacly, sweet little song. And they take that off and they put My Generation on, and you know, like this is just like a chainsaw going through this treacly kind of pop music. And you even see the album, though I'm going to say this, there was a continuity error big time when they put the record on. It's one of those re-releases from the 70s that was a double, I want to say My Generation and a quick one. And I'm like, no, like you need the original record for that. But yeah, when the Who are in it in the background constantly, and that's really cool.
When he goes into that party, there's such a good tracking shot.
Mm-hmm.
I just imagine maybe Martin Scorsese doing it later, but faster, you know. And you get the whole vibe of the party. And I really noticed, I guess the character's name is Monkey. I really noticed this time the little story she had about always being shit on by Jimmy, like through the whole thing, so he can get to the girl he likes. And I found it pretty annoyingly sad this time.
I noticed he was cuddling her with a fag in his hand.
Yeah.
A cigarette. I think I should say in America, because it means something different to you guys.
We knew enough to know what you meant there.
Exactly.
But you know, that whole scene where they go into the party. I mean, I when I was a kid, I went to house parties like that, but it's a nightmare. I'm a parent now. I can't even imagine coming home and finding my kids with people having sex in the bath and people lying about the place. Do you know what I mean? It's crazy.
Yeah.
But when you watch it and you're young, it's like, this is great.
Well, you're going to see a thread when we're on this conversation here where it's like seeing the movie then and seeing the movie now.
Yeah.
Right? Like I can see the movie completely differently now because I'm a dad now and I'm old and maybe I'm just older now.
Yeah.
So like I understand teenage angst, but I don't understand the need to, fuck up someone's flower bed.
Yeah. Well, you change as you get older, don't you? I mean, when I was a kid, I used to love the Beastie Boys. Okay. License to Ill.
Right.
Okay. Classic album. So I thought, and I put it on and it annoyed me. It annoyed me.
Yeah.
Seriously. I couldn't listen to it. I was like, I can't listen to this anymore. But when I was a kid, no, I loved it. Loved it.
Yeah. We talked about, Ethan and I think on Twitter, we were talking about, these kids are kind of a-holes, but like we said, these are teenagers and the world revolves around them. And, I think too, that there are parts in the movie where like Jimmy could be a hero, a cinematic hero, like when Kevin's attacked by the mods, when the rockers attack Spider and they go in retaliation, they find Kevin and a friend off by himself and they beat him up. Kevin and Jimmy recognize each other. Kevin asks him for help, and instead of helping, instead of being the hero, Jimmy runs away, and that's kind of how kids are. He's not really a hero. These kids are a mess, but they act like kids.
Did you notice that a lot of the scenes at night were wet?
Yeah,
and I watched the commentary on the DVD, and the director said whenever they film at night, they go out and they throw water down because the reflection it gives just creates, so much more. And a lot of those scenes that were filmed at Spitalfields and in the markets, it just looks so nice with that water on the ground. It doesn't rain all the time here in England.
Yeah.
It is today, actually. So maybe like.
Yeah, but that's one of the beautiful things about this movie too, is that it feels lived in. These aren't sets; these are locations, and they feel lived in, and it feels less like you're watching a movie and almost more like you're watching a documentary. It just feels immediate.
I wish there was resolution to the Kevin thing.
Yeah,
because after it's kind of like vignettes, and I also compare it to another like. He might have had something to do with this movie too, another Robert Stigwood movie, Saturday Night Fever. When you get past all the disco stuff, there's a not pleasant story in there about gangs and about.
There's a rape in the film, isn't there?
There's a suicide. There's all sorts of nasty things in Saturday Night Fever, which it's not just him on the dance floor, but there's some kind of resolution to that gang story in that movie a little bit. Here there's not even a reconciliation at all with Kevin and Jimmy, and I found that a little frustrating, but once again, they're kids and you don't really learn anything.
Yeah. And remember too, Kevin nails it at the beginning of the movie because you meet in the bathhouse, they're new, they have no idea, they have no idea until they get to the diner that Jimmy's a mod, and Kevin's kind of a rocker, dresses the part, but Kevin tells him, I just got out of the Army, and I'm here to tell you that, there's always going to be some C word in Stars and Stripes. It's going to tell you what to do. You're going to wear a uniform, and that person's going to tell you what to do all the time. And it's a real sort of foreshadowing of sort of the arc of the rest of the movie that, your uniform kind of determines what happens to you. And is that really what you want?
What do you think happened at the end of the film? Do you think he the way I see it is obviously when he realizes that Aceface is a bellboy and he just wants to destroy that life that he had, and by doing that is by getting rid of his bike over the cliff.
Yeah.
Do you think then he would have, because he'd been kicked out of his home by then, hadn't he?
Yeah.
Do you think he would have gone back and made up with his parents and changed his life, or do you think he would have? Who knows? What do you think?
I think that's like the constant Townsend, boilerplate ending to things, which is like, just don't know. I don't think he kills himself because that's not what they showed.
The opening scene kind of indicates that he's walking away, isn't it?
Well, that's what I was going to ask. The very first time I just picked up on this from the thing last night. Is that first shot of him walking away after the thing is destroyed at the very end?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm asking. I'm not sure, but
my understanding is that opening scene is key to what happens at the final scene.
Okay.
Yeah, you're seeing the last scene in the first scene.
Exactly.
That's how I saw it.
Yeah.
Because when I watched it, I thought, okay, what led up to this? And the whole film is what led up to that first scene.
Right.
And sometimes too, I wonder if there's definitely a parallel between Jimmy and Tommy, in that you have all of these trappings, you know, and in Jimmy's case, like I said, we see this arc over a weekend where he reaches the high point. He's got, you know, he's accepted by the coolest guy in the gang. He's got the girl, he's got everything, the job, the clobber, the clothes, everything. And then it's all stripped away, just like Tommy. Everything is stripped away until at the end, it's just him. And, you know, you go back to the soundtrack too. I've had enough of living. I've had enough of dying, you know. He's just back to baseline again. It's all taken away from him. What now? That's how I see it.
I would like to think that because that confrontation with his mom is rough.
Mm-hmm.
It's rough stuff. And you know, apparently she's been cool before it. She'd let him put the pictures up, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
My mom was cool, but she wouldn't let me put like naked pictures up when I was a kid. You know, hopefully it's just the beginning of realizing that you have to get a job. You know what I mean? Like, you know, he's got to grow up at some point. I mean, I hate to sound like an old man, not like the spirit of, because I remember, what do I like about the album Quadrophenia? And I was talking about Bets before. I remember holding on to that teenage angst for so long, and that's why I can revisit the album, because it helped me let go of a lot of that.
Yeah.
But you know, he needs to get some kind of like quote unquote help, or he's not going to learn anything for a while, and he's going to, you know, life is going to punch him in the face a few more times.
What's everyone's least favorite scene?
Anytime there's something that's really, really out of place and pretty racist, it makes me feel uncomfortable.
I thought the scene with them in the bath was a bit odd.
Well, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah.
I put in big parentheses in big quote, ask about the bathhouse situation. So in England, what's the bathhouse situation?
The bathtub situation? Well, no. Listen. I don't know what it was like in the 60s, because that's where it was set.
Right.
Yeah.
But, I was born in the 70s, and we didn't have communal baths.
Yeah.
And we certainly didn't have film crews in there filming our privates. But it's just a very bizarre. I was watching it. I was like, why is this in it? And I don't know whether it's not titillating, is it? It's not titillating for girls.
No,
it was not titillating for blokes.
I remember being, like I say, seeing it in the theater and just being like, oh.
I thought, they've made a mistake. No, they haven't. They've done another shot of it.
Yeah, I kind of know a little bit, though, a little background here. And I guess this is post-war, and there wasn't a whole lot of indoor plumbing at the time. So you have these places to wash up. But by the time the film was made and they were scouting locations, this was one of the last bathhouses left in London. And they really had to work to find it. So that's kind of the story on that.
I saw a little bit of something about the filmmaking of it, and you know, I've covered some other TV shows, and this idea of nudity that's not shocking is something it's not that I like it, but I think there needs to be a stop sensationalizing of the human body, because we all have one. Yeah. And this is what they were trying to do. Just be
I thought it was kind of like done because a lot of films in the sort of 60s and 70s had used female nudity, and it was kind of like saying, no, we'll do male nudity. But the difference between it is, in the female side, it's titillating, and in this film, it's just part of the thing. It's part of they're having a bath, and they don't know each other, do they? They're singing or whatever in the thing, and that's where they get to meet.
But it might be titillating for some people, but it wasn't shot in a tittillating way.
No, not at all. It's just out there. And like I said, it's real important to the movie that they see each other, and nobody has a uniform on, and so they're buds. They haven't seen each other forever, and they're really happy to see each other. And then again, they get to the diner, and then they realize, oh no, you're dressed in that uniform, and I'm dressed in this uniform. We can't be friends.
There's one thing I was going to research before, and I didn't do it, and I should have done. But his boss at the advertising agency, and he also appears on the. I think he's on the train as well when he's walking through.
Yeah.
Now that
actor, I think that's a hallucinant.
Is it, do you think? What?
I kind of think so. I think he's really he's out of his brain on the train. So,
but that actor, I think, and people can check, but I think that actor plays the policeman in Hitchcock's Frenzy.
I think you're right, because my understanding was he was an established actor.
Yeah. And I was watching it, and I mean, Frenzy is one of my favorite films of all time. But yeah, when I saw him in it, I was like, oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah. So something about the actors that I want to put in there real quickly was one of the ideas that Frank Rodham, the director, had when he cast all these kids, and literally, I think Mark Wingett was 16. Phil Davis was 23, so you had this, but they were kids. Phil Daniels was 19, Leslie Ash was 19. Was that he wanted to encourage them to be friends, so that when the film was made, they did already have that connection, and it really plays through. So he kept them all in the same hotel, and they got up to teen hijinks like they did. But I always have a good John story. So basically what happened was John Entwistle showed up periodically at the hotel and would scoop these kids up and drive them around London to meet the original mods that he knew from the Who's orbit in the 60s. And they would have these get-togethers where these mods would show them, the dances and the clothing and the etiquette that went along with that. So these kids really got this sort of immersive bonding experience that really, I think, it shows through in the film.
Yeah, of course John Entwistle showed up and got it running. He almost seemed to be like the Who's representative on the movie, because I know he did the soundtrack, and we're going to talk about that another time. But
yeah, he also there's a great film from the BBC archives on YouTube where there's a mod fashion show in '79, and John and Kenny show up to it, and John's decked out in his best disco guy glory, and they ask him, they're like, are you here for the mod revival? What do you think of all this? And John's basically like, I'm here for the money. We're gonna make a lot of money on this. And they talk to this guy from Secret Affair, who's this young mod kid, and he's so offended by that. And I'm like, well, if they'd asked Pete would have given him a 10-minute dissertation on mod culture and this, but John, he's there for the money. So you ask John, you've got a John answer.
I was reading a book about Paul Weller, and apparently, I hope I got this right. Apparently, he said that, or the Who were touring again, and he said why, and someone said, "Oh, he's down to his last 4 million," and that became a running joke with Paul Weller. And they always used to say, "Oh, down to my last 4 million." I don't know if I might have misremembered that. When you haven't researched something, you think, did I read that?
Yeah, exactly.
Put in the comments if I'm making that up, but I think that's true.
They're live at Royal Albert Hall backstage special feature is like my favorite thing in the world, because they're both trying to figure out what to play with each other. This is Pete and Paul.
Yeah.
And they try something and they say it didn't work, and they both sit there for a minute, and one of them just goes, "All right, well, I guess that's it then," and they both start to get up and leave. So they figure it out, but obviously they came back and did the thing. Hey, is that pinball machine they're playing in Tommy the movie with the bucking Bronco?
I didn't.
I recognize that bucking Bronco from a pinball machine.
Very possible.
Tommy, so I don't know. Shared experience. Okay, talk about the Who multiverse, right? That's your big thing.
Yeah.
So as soon as these bikers are done in Brighton, right?
Yeah.
They leave Brighton after the brawl, and they go to destroy the life of some camping hippies, and then Tommy flies in on a
Oh yeah, yeah.
on a sky thing,
Uh-huh.
singing "Sensation." That's
Yeah.
because there's always biker fights in Who movies, I guess. No.
Maybe it's a theme, perhaps. Yeah.
Did anyone notice Peter Pettigrew?
Yes, he's the projectionist and
Timothy
at the ad agency. Yes.
Timothy
And
Spall. Yeah.
yeah, is it Lee Thompson? It's Lee. I want to say Lee Daniels or Lee Thompson, who is the one of the mod kids at the tailor's shop, and he pops up, and he was on Comic Strip with Ada Edmondson and Rick Mayall.
Okay.
I recognized him right out of the gate too. Yeah.
And I swear to
more
God,
about British comedy than I do.
Yeah.
The bartender, when he goes to get when they walk literally into a Cray movie, when he goes into the bar.
Oh yeah.
Right. The bartender is definitely the main heavy from Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
And the gangster, the guy who sells him the paraffin, he was a real life hard case. I mean, he was a real life gangster that they kind of recruited for the movie. I don't remember the particulars, but and he died in the 80s. But yeah, he was the real thing.
And we're all shocked that Bill Kerbishley knows that guy, right? No. Okay. Next. Anyway. So Jimmy decides he's got to go get drugs. And
yeah.
But he starts off early and he goes around to see all his friends, all working at their dirty jobs.
Yeah.
Right. So what do you think in Jimmy's mind he thinks the ace face does for a living? And
it just exists.
And what vocation could this ace face have that Jimmy would be like, oh, that makes sense? Because
I agree with Betts. I don't think he actually thinks he works. I think he just exists as a ace face.
Yeah. And that was one of the things too. Why originally the guy who played Peter Fenton, Gary Cooper, was going to play the ace face, and they felt like they literally said the words otherworldly. They needed him to appear otherworldly.
Mm.
And Sting was at the time cleaning houses for this woman who was friends with the casting director, and she was like, "I got your guy." He wasn't famous or anything like that. He was, like a teacher and a house cleaner. But
was he not in the police at that time?
He was, but here's the interesting thing about it. They hadn't broken yet, and he showed up at the hotel one night, and he's got his little badge on that says the police, and Mark Wingett, the little punk rock kid, says to him, he says, "What's that on your shirt?" And he says, "Oh, that's a badge for my band." And Wingett says, "They're called the Police?" And Sting's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, that's a stupid name for a band." but he had the Police, and the kids would all go from the movie. They would go see the Police, but they were not famous. They were a struggling act. Sting was cast for the movie because he did have that sort of otherworldly presence. He didn't look like everybody else in the movie.
I'm not clear on the timeline, but it might be pre Andy Summers, please.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be.
I'll tell you something interesting as well. I grew up in a town called Leatherhead in Surrey. Okay. And there was a small recording studio called Surrey Sound Studios, which was above a dairy. That's where they recorded their first album.
Wow.
Nice.
So if anyone wants to Google Surrey Studios and the Police, they'll see this tiny little recording studio above a dairy is where it all happened. And then there's loads of artists have recorded there.
Wow.
The guy that founded it's passed now, but yeah, it's kind of cool that somewhere close to me, helped create, such a massive band.
He takes the ace faces saying, "Oh, you guys notice in this bicycle scene when he's fixing his bike with Kevin, that shot of Phil Daniels and his face in all the mirrors?"
Yes.
Cover. That's probably one of my favorite parts.
It is really cool.
Yeah. When I was looking up videos on YouTube about this, I guess the alley scene is a much bigger deal to other people than it is to me. Any thoughts on that seemed to be a pivotal moment for him? So much so that he goes back and reminisces about it 2 days later.
Yeah.
And the way that they talk about the girl, right in front of her, is kind of gross too. You know,
It's also horrible what she says to the guy, where he says, "Yeah, I hear you like going up and down in alleys," and it's kind of like, that's terrible.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Again, yeah, again, it's sort of like they're like feral little kids. I mean, they say shocking things, they do shocking things because they're self-centered.
But she says to him, doesn't she? She says, "You're losing your mind." You know, when he
Yeah.
goes to try and win her back,
Yeah.
and she sort of says, "Look at yourself. You're losing your mind." And it's kind of like, you know, like his dad had a go at him and said, "You know, you're losing your mind as well." Maybe he
Right.
is losing his mind as well.
Yeah.
Apart from being an adolescent but maybe he has got a little bit of mental illness going on.
Yeah. Definitely.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like they're all on edge, but he's a little bit more on edge, right?
Yeah.
Like, and they're like, they don't know which Jimmy they're going to get when they go up to him. So they're a little on guard sometimes.
Yeah, well, you go back to the original album, Quadrophenia, split into 4 parts, and where the helpless dancer, the romantic,
That's the most annoying song part in the whole movie. You stop dancing at the end.
Yeah.
It's really like just taking this piece of the song out of there and putting it with the shattered scooter on the ground. That bothered me more than it should have.
Yeah.
And I assume Steph lives in a yellow house.
Possible.
No? Okay.
We'll never know.
So what is the status of like the movie Paul in England now? I mean, are they still showing it? Are people still going occasionally? Are there like fests?
Yeah, I saw on Facebook there's a Quadrophenia night, and it's touring around the country, where you can go and there's a DJ playing music. As I said, Brighton, there's a shop called Quadrophenia Alley. The mod scene is still super popular. I mean, I can tell from the demographics of my video, it's 40 plus. You know, there's not many kids that are getting into it, I don't think. Having said that, I did see a really cool band in Brighton that were doing mod stuff, but it's still there.
Yeah.
It's still it's not like, I was going to say, it's not like punk, because punk's still there as well, but I think mod is stronger. You know, and there's magazines, there's magazines, magazine called Detail, which, is all about the mod culture, magazine called Scootering. So it's still healthy. And I actually think it's nice because it's a youth cult or youth culture that is actually cool. Do you know what I mean? Whereas, it's not so cool to be a punk with a Mohican, but it is cool to wear a sharp suit or be smartly dressed. Because let's not forget, most of these working class kids, they turn to mod to prove they were something that they weren't.
Yeah.
To say, look at me.
Which is the whole basis of the movie.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts? I mean, I feel like I've said everything I can say. I mean, I like the movie a lot. I think it's better than Tommy.
Can I just take you up on something? I saw your Tommy review.
Uh-oh.
And I'm going to have an argument now.
Okay.
Have an argument.
Best part, what is the Tommy background? What?
You said you hated Oliver Reed in it.
Yeah.
I love Oliver Reed in it.
I mean, I'm glad that we both live in countries where we can say those things, and it's okay.
Listen, Oliver Reed is a legend, and the fact they got him, Ken Russell is obviously, a big fan of Oliver Reed. The fact I know his singing's not great,
right,
okay,
right,
but I think his performance in Tommy is great.
Yeah. I was defending him. I just want to put
and I think someone has to.
I think I defended his, I think I defended his legacy and his brilliance as an actor. I'm pretty sure I said that.
Yeah.
No, but you've got to back that up by saying, and he was okay in Tommy.
It wasn't. I mean, he absolutely wasn't, and I don't even know the words he was saying. And it's okay.
But in answer to your question, final thoughts on it. I mean, I thought, I like the film. It's good. What do people think? And I went to Rotten Tomatoes. It's 100%.
Yeah.
there's very few films that have that level of critic reviews, all positive.
Yeah. That's anything final to say about it?
I hadn't seen it for quite a while, and I went back and watched it again, and I have to say I fell in love with it all over again in a different way this time. Because again, you know, when you're a teenager and you see it, you're like, I want to be just like them and all that stuff. And seeing it as an adult and thinking, you know, it works on two levels. It works on seeing it as a young person, seeing it as, you know, an older person. But I just loved it. I loved the kids. I loved, again, how lived in it looked, how immediate it looked. The fact is, it doesn't glorify the violence in the riot scenes. The riot scenes are horrifying. They look like people are being beaten half to death. You know, they're not choreographed. Violence is ugly in this film. A lot of things are ugly in this film, but it is such a good film, and it is sort of a punch to the gut in a lot of ways. It's very effective, beautifully shot, beautifully acted. It deserves everything that people say about it, and I really honestly wish that the Who had made more films, because the three that they did are pretty great, you know. And I'm sorry that the Who films limited just sort of fizzled out after that, because I would have liked to have seen what more they could have done. It's a fantastic film.
I was watching a Kirbishley interview, and he said, you know, over time, you know, we got to where it wanted it, but it didn't happen like right when it, you know, it's not commercially successful right off the bat, and that's probably the reason why there weren't more Who films.
Yeah. An interesting thing too was that they talked about, they were worried that people wouldn't be able to understand kind of the thick accents, and there was a lot of talk about, do we subtitle it? And they were like, no, we don't want to subtitle it, because if we do, then it kind of turns into a foreign film, and that's a different category that we don't want to go to, you know. And I thought that was a really interesting kind of thing that's going on there.
And
I don't need subtitles, do I?
No. But I took a friend, you know, Floridian friend, back in like 81, 82, and I remember her sitting next to me saying, I don't know what they're saying. I was like, stay with it. You'll get it. You'll get it.
I have to thank Monty Python for making me not need subtitles
same
for
here,
that kind
same
of
here.
stuff. You know what I mean? So I would say that I really liked the movie. I liked it more this time than I did before. I could really concentrate on Phil Daniels, the current star of House of the Dragon on HBO. He plays a Maester. So it's always good to see him pop up in things. And I'll repeat it for the 80 millionth time on this channel that, yes, I did see him live narrate Quadrophenia at Madison Square Garden with The Who in 1996.
Nice.
And it just added him sitting on the stage, like screaming into this microphone over the crowd, Madison Square Garden audience, so ready for The Who to come on. It was a truly amazing experience, and he's part of that, and it's great to see him in everything he does, whether you like Blur or not. It's great to see him. You know, I give Quadrophenia 2 thumbs up. I really like the movie.
Same.
It's a really good movie, and every once in a while there's a Who song, and hey man, that's what I love about that. That's everything, and I love. So thanks for talking with me about
Absolutely.
it. Paul, give us a YouTube channel and you know, how we can find you.
Yeah. So people can find me on Twitter, Skyaaz. They can find me on Instagram, but I don't use it. And my YouTube channel is called Skyaaz Podcast. It's got quite a few mod-related episodes, Paul Weller, but it's also got some interesting stuff. It's got interviews with old school hip-hop artists, Melly Mel, Man Parrish, Egyptian Lover. I also have a really cool episode where I tracked down the lead singer of a band called Chumbawamba.
Yeah.
And I want to find out what happened to Chumbawamba, and I find out. Don't you worry about that.
I'm going to check that out. Actually, I want to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's an interesting piece. But but please follow the channel. It's, you know, it's growing nicely, and it encourages me to do more.
Absolutely.
You know, if people follow and like, and leave a comment, even if you don't like it, leave a comment, because it helps the algorithm.
Right. But thanks for coming on. Really
absolutely. It's great to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you both.
We'll talk to you guys soon.
So all you
Thank you.
tickets, I just want you to dig me. With my stripes and jacket that the salt can plainly see.